Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Headlines Unleashed. The
Hi.
the, the Amazon feature thinks I'm talking to it, but I'm not. I'm talking to you, world, and I'm talking to my dear friend Emily Dobson down there in Porto Alegre, Brazil. This is Headlines Unleashed, where two professionals in higher education give each other headlines, and without any background, we wax poetic about what we think the headline is related to, and then we get into more details as well. And it is wonderful to do some norms unleashed with universities around the world, to do some global minds unleashed with thinkers about what globalization really means, and to do headlines unleashed with you, Emily. How are things today?
Well, by background, you meant like a screen background, not that we don't have background. Is that what you meant?
What
Or
what
did
I
you
meant
have
no
background?
no what I meant was I give you a headline, you give me a headline, and we don't have background information, but then we just like provide what we think about the article. And then
I
we
got it. We have no background. So either I'm not knowing how to use my Zoom, which I don't. I think my computer's too old for a background, or we don't have any background. Like we shouldn't be talking about the things we're talking about. We're just talking about it because we want to.
No, actually, I think we have the background to talk about what we're talking about. And I think your background shows that we have the background to be able to talk about what we're talking about.
How many years have you been in education?
Um, Working in higher education, I have been doing that for 20 years.
So between the two of us, we're almost on half a century
Yeah.
of edu. Wow.
Yeah. It's
Because this is my 25th year. And it's also, and now I don't know if I'm right or not, but I could have sworn I saw that it was Education USA's 25th birthday too.
well, happy birthday to Education USA. You know what it may be? It may not be their 25th birthday. They just completed their forum. It
No,
just
I
their
know
for
that. I saw the forums. We had
would it
friends there.
would it be? Yeah, we had. I was supposed to go, but for a variety of reasons, I didn't go. 25th for Education USA or 25th for the forum, maybe.
It could be for the forum because I think they're 1988. So if you do the math on that, 26. So maybe they didn't have a forum that first year. I remember their 20th birthday. They were collecting pictures and sharing those out. But I love Education USA.
No, they're great. They're
I,
great.
and it's been a while that we've been working with them. I work with them on different projects, but and I'm very partial to the Brazil team. But I find that schools don't know about them as much as they should. And every school in every country, they're in 175 countries. I think they've got something like 400 plus advising centers.
Yep.
They're trained and run by the US Department of State,
Hmm.
right? And they have all these advisors and they're fantastic. I mean, these guys have presentations and they have a channel, a YouTube channel, if you haven't seen it. They have presentations on everything. I feel like every school, American, non-American, IB, AP, national, should know their local Education USA office.
I would agree with that. They
No
should know them. They should utilize them. They're a service for U.S. Universities,
matter-
and they provide such great resources to counselors in the countries that they're in. That was my first experience with Education USA. Was in 2005. I didn't know about them prior to 2005. But in 2005 in Singapore, where I was going to get my master's degree, it was in the Education USA office. SUNY Buffalo would bring professors out and they would share office space with Education USA. And so then I started meeting them and I said, "Oh, well, you have all these resources for me. Okay, cool. I'll bring my students here. I'll take these resources back to my students to learn a little bit more about the US universities that were coming into Singapore." And Karen was fabulous at supporting and engaging with us as a school.
Oh, my first experience was in Brasilia. They have a great office in Brasilia. And I didn't know a lot about student athletes. And I think every counselor, whether you're coming into the profession or you're expanding the profession, you have your parameters, right, Sam? You're not going to be a counselor that knows everything. And I think the most important part of that is having a team that can step in when
Yeah.
you're working with students or working with a dynamic class that has different needs than you're used to servicing. Bring somebody in. And that was the case with Education USA. I thought, how am I going to know about NCAA in like a week? How do I know how to talk about athletic scholarships? It's a lot of work, right? And we have people that specialize in it. And I called down to the center. I was like, is there any chance? And then I found out they have this ginormous library of
Yeah.
presentations. And that's one of them. So I tell everybody, I'm like, listen, you shouldn't know it all. And if you don't, here's who you call in.
Yeah. And if they don't know it, because I mean they're small offices usually in each country, but there's a network. I think it's over 500 advisors in total.
Oh, I'm sure it is. And we have 44 just here in Brazil, 44 offices, and there's more than one person manning some of those offices.
Yeah, that's
But
impressive. We didn't have in Singapore we had like two people, one person, two people, but that's okay because it's a small country. Brazil's huge. Education USA Forum just happened
Washington, D.C.
in
Yeah.
Washington D.C. Our friends were there from the regional the REACs, right? Like Rita, they're from South America.
It's mine.
They're there. And then universities and vendors show up at the Education USA Forum. In fact, I was going to go, but it would have been my first one. And I have a few other extenuating circumstances. I couldn't make the drive over there. But it really would have been my first Education USA Forum, even though I worked directly with them to create MOUs for my previous work.
Say what an MOU is. Not everybody knows.
An MOU is a memorandum of understanding. It's an agreement.
It's an agreement, a fancy way for an agreement to be said.
Yeah. There's like an RFP process, which is the request for proposal. And then
Wow.
after you win the tender for the request for proposal, then you can get an MOU. These are all the partnership terms that you get to know, right?
You could make it in Brazil. We're all acronyms down here all the time.
Love acronyms.
You'd be perfectly at home here.
ILA. I love acronyms.
SI, stop it.
So yeah, so that's a headline is Education USA turns 25 in some way, shape, or form.
Hey, listen, before you go on to your headline though, opportunity funds from them is something that we should bring up because I don't think enough people know about it. So,
Yes.
a couple of my kids have gotten into the Opportunities Funds program is run every year. It's for kids that have a great chance at getting full scholarships, but won't have the support financially or otherwise to do the process. And so they apply to Opportunity Funds if they're chosen. Education USA covers all of that for them and helps them through the process financially and otherwise.
I worked directly with the Opportunity Fund team when we provided. That was the MOU is providing free tests to the Opportunity Fund. Which interestingly, other test providers do not provide the test for free. They provide a discount, which means when the Education USA office actually provides certain testing materials, it's not free from the vendor still gets paid. It's actually the Department of State, so it's kind of US taxpayer dollars paying for international students to take certain tests.
Well, I'll tell you what,
which is perfectly fine, but
the most global and helpful test taking company I think is one that
I absolutely. Oh, I mean, working with
and they're always willing to help. And if you come with a good story and show them what you got, they'll check the background and they'll get on your team right away.
Yep. Yeah. And running the DET access program and working with Education USA, working with the REACs of Education USA on a monthly, I would provide reports to them. It was a highlight because they were so appreciative of the reports that we would send over. But not everybody gives it for free, you know.
No,
But
they don't. And that's an interesting fact that somebody is actually covering those costs.
somebody's covering those costs. That's how finances work, folks. There's
Somebody's got to.
that's how it works. Somebody is covering those costs. I always thought it'd be a fun, and this is I proposed this a few different times, but it was a little bit sensational. But you know what? Now I'm just saying it. I think the reason I don't want to do it is because the US needs more international students in a variety of places to help show globally how beneficial diversity is, right? How much the farmers in Missouri and the store clerks in Brooklyn benefit from this global thinking. So I don't want to put too much of a damper on this, but I do think it would be fun for a certain party to run with your taxpayer dollars are giving free tests to international students and your kids are paying for them. Like, it would be a pretty sensational uh Wall Street Journal article.
You're nothing if not sensational in your thoughts, Sam.
I think
I,
what
I
yeah.
don't disagree with you. Things need to be done a little bit differently. I mean, this conversation is going on in every level of education.
Yeah.
And things don't shift a lot, though. That's the weird part. I was thinking about that. But I think that's another headline. Things that don't shift in education and should.
Ooh, things that don't shift in education but should would be a fun international ACAC or NACAC like session.
Write it down. You are going to write it down.
Yeah,
Am I gonna regret this when you ask me to prepare this presentation with you?
no.
Okay, I'll do it, I'm excited for your headlines. You told me that you have two of them.
I have two of them. One of them is in kind of direct competition with Education USA. So for all of our friends out there, Melissa, Karen, Rita, Ludus, Charlie, the whole shebang. I somewhat apologize, but we also do Norms Unleashed. So you already know that we push people to GeoSwerve. This one is interesting. I don't know much about it, but it was in my favorite magazine, as you know, is The Economist.
You love the I'm making you the co-host in case you want to share here.
I'm actually okay. I may share. I don't know. This country is now a magnet for the world's medical students.
Oh, dang.
Give me the country you think it is.
I really have I have no clue. I'm gonna say, God, I'm gonna go with Hungary.
Well, Hungary is one that we have interviewed before on Norms Unleashed. So that's
Right, that's why I feel comfortable saying it because I know more and more people are looking at it.
Exactly. So I'm gonna read a little bit more from this. This country pumps out a prodigious a number of doctors each year. In 2021, the country boasted 26 medical graduates per 100,000 inhabitants, higher than almost any other country in the OECD.
Oh, the OECD. Okay.
Among those newly minted graduates, international students are edging out the locals. Figures from the OECD show that whereas overall places on medical degrees in this country grew by 17% from 2011 to 2019, those on foreign language medical courses increased by 75%.
Wow.
And I didn't know any of this. Nearly a third of all medical programs in this country are now taught in either French or English. It's not Hungary.
Definitely not.
In 2020, the last year for which government figures are publicly available, 12,000 foreign students were studying medicine, dentistry, or pharmacology degrees.
That's a huge number.
Annual tuition fees in this country run anywhere from 3,000 to 8,500 euros.
euros.
So that's 3,500 to 9,500 US dollars a year for a medical degree. This country's medical schools have been keen to cash in on foreign demand.
God, I wish I had Ben Ambrose with me right now. He'd probably know exactly.
I bet you Ben from Medical Doorway would know.
He would know.
The
Okay,
the country is Romania.
I was close. Dang it.
You were close. You were close. Yeah. These Eastern European countries that specialize in medicine. You know, we've recently interviewed Stephen Smith from Mohadon University in Thailand, which
That
is
was
also
unreal.
very medically driven as its genesis. Romania is one that has never been on my radar, but I also did pull up recently the Study in Romania website. So study.eu is a great website. And then you go in through different countries. And so you can look up Romania, study.eu.
I think we need to find somebody from a medical school or just study in Romania would be good. Maybe Education USA.
I think Education USA, I think it's Gordana, I think is in Romania. So
You'd know. I think we should do that because I think, you know, my best friend is Hungarian Romanian. And you know who I love from Romania? Tony from DePaul. Do you know Tony from
I
DePaul?
do know Tony from DePaul.
Fantastic.
She's great. She is from Romania.
She's fantastic. Anyway, so I think we should dig into that. But I'm going to call you out on something. You have to say what OECD is.
I don't have to say what
You
I
do. That's my rule as a counselor. We go through so many acronyms and you see so many confused faces. What if people want to look it up later?
so I just searched up because I knew it's countries. There's like 30 or 50. There's a number of countries that are a little bit more financially strong that group together economically, right? So then I'm going to search it up here. And OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Yep. It's actually a great place to get information about different countries. It's a phenomenal site in and of itself. I use it a lot for reports and looking up data.
I use it a lot. I knew the E was economic. I didn't know what the C and D were, to be honest. I knew E was economic, so that's why I was able to say like financially strong. But yeah,
Yeah,
or
no,
the
that's well done.
Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
I like it.
It is a great site, and you should check it out. I think I use it for strategy when I work with universities and organizations to think about the strategic approaches for where to recruit students.
Yeah,
So
Brazil's on that. And I look to see Brazil's trends as an educational hub, see what's happening down here, and also to compare and contrast for the orientation we do for KIC Univassist,
yeah,
talk about what we see in the data.
I love the data. Oh, the Organization for Economic Cooperation.
So we've got Education USA for people to check out. We've got OECD for people to check out. We're giving all kinds of tips.
Romania. Got to check out Romania. We are here. We are here now in the last little bit of our headlines unleashed as we think about things that maybe we haven't thought about before. And here is a great survey that that I think countries should do on a whole. But this is from The Economist, and it is from China. It's called Trickle Down Economics.
Okay.
And this headline I just was interested, so I was reading it. And then as I was reading it, I was like, oh, there's something in it for Headlines Unleashed with Emily. The number one reason for success in China. So in 2004, in 2009, in 2014, and in 2023, a survey was done by Big Data China in collaboration with Stanford.
Okay.
It's China, reasons given for why people are rich.
Oh,
So it was in 04, 09, 14, and 23. What do you
Okay.
think the number one reason in 2023 was for why people are rich?
Why? And it has nothing to do with education.
Well, the headline had nothing to do with education. So
Gosh, people are rich. Why people? Why would?
I'm just gonna tell you. It's
I'm
it
gonna
goes
tap out. Yeah, I
yeah,
can't even.
I'm just gonna tell you. It goes back to the old adage, it's not about what you know, it's about
Who you know?
who you know, connections.
Why people
Con-
are rich because you're
why
connected.
people are richer connections. So in 2004, connections was the third reason why. There's two other reasons ahead of it. In 2009, it was the fourth reason why, according to this survey, right? In 14, it was the third. And in 23, it's the number one reason why people are rich.
I just have to know if people were given that as an option or they came up with that option on their own.
They were given it. Here are the options they were given in 2004.
Okay.
They were given ability and talent. They were given high education. They were given connections. They were given grew up in a rich family,
Mm-hmm.
better opportunities. Sorry, they were not given grew up in a rich family. Better opportunities, hard work, unfair economic system, good luck, and dishonesty.
Oh, dishonesty. Yikes. I bet you that would change depending on the country you asked.
So this is why I thought it would be really fun. In 2009, they added grew up in a rich family,
Uh-huh.
and they added parents with a high level of education.
Wonder where they pulled these categories. I mean, they make sense on a superficial level.
It's interesting. Like grew up in a rich family, parents with a high level of education, unfair economic system. It seems loaded. But
They asked all the billionaires and millionaires in the world to which of these categories they've had in their life.
I have no idea how they established it. And again, I didn't get into the details of the actual survey. I didn't look at the survey, but here is what it is. And the reason it was interesting to me is
Education.
I look what happened and China, right? This is China specifically. We know that China was, and up until recently, still was the main source of students for US universities.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
But look, in 2004, it was the second reason that people thought you would be rich. And then it was the third reason in '09. And then it was the sixth reason in 14. And it's the seventh reason. Unfair economic system is now a higher likelihood in people's minds for
Mhm.
why you're rich. It's not that you have a great education or even look at that hard work has dropped, ability and talent has dropped, high education has dropped. But what's increased? Unfair economic system, connections, you grew up in a rich family, you
This
were
is
given better opportunities.
well, what has gotten you most of your work that you deem as successful? They might not be wrong because if you think about international education, like a lot of our jobs are based on connection. A lot.
Yeah, I
Who you
mean, for sure. I believe strongly it's not about what you know, it's about who you know to a
but
point, to a point. But it
I
is about your ability and talent, your hard work, your education,
right.
good luck, sure, is in there for sure. All of this connections are a great way to open the door, but it's the other stuff that should keep it going. My concern is that the other stuff that should keep it going is no longer as valued as it once was.
Well, should keep it going. I think it's easier to mask your talent and ability internationally because there's not as many benchmarks and standards, there's not as many checks. It's frustrating. But I would say, my connections were built through a lot of hard work. I mean, a lot of hard work. The
Yeah.
hardest work I've done has been when I've been outside of schools because you don't have the resources and you don't have the name brand and you don't have, the push behind you and the titles and all of that. That's tough. That's a lot of work.
It is. It's a lot of work.
But it can be satisfying. You built it from the ground. I mean, you know that. You've been in and out of schools too. You know what it's like.
I was
And
in a yeah, I was in a school where we had no connections. We had to build the connections up, right?
oh yeah,
For sure. And then I went to a school that the connections were already established. And so then it was about maintaining those. Um, my
it's
fa- my my favorite part about this is that dishonesty in 2004 was the 8th of 8th, and in 9, 14, and 23, it was the 10th of 10th. Like
no, I'm glad it's gone down. That
it's
worries me.
it's it's stayed the lowest one on this. Like people do not believe that dishonesty is the way that you become rich or make money, or at least they're not willing to admit that they believe that.
There's a lot going on in Latin America, and I wonder if that dishonesty would be at a different ranking if you were to ask around here.
I wonder
And
if I haven't looked, like I said, I haven't.
I can't vote because I am not Latin American, but I wonder what other folks would vote.
Yeah, if you gave them this list, why
Yeah,
why people are rich.
I feel like we should ask our college counseling groups, just see what they'd say. We have such a global band of folks. It'd be so interesting.
I mean, if you had to rank these, what would be your, based off of your experience in life, what would be your number one?
Why we're rich?
Yeah,
I
what
would say
why
I
people are rich.
agree with connections. I would agree with ability, talent, and hard work. I would agree with education. Education was part of my connections, right? Had I not gone to Loyola Marymount and not met the teachers in grad school that I met, I may not have been international, right? So
Yeah.
people changed my trajectory. Um, I would also say parents with high education level, like I think we talked about this on some of our first sessions, but I came from a college is not an option family. Like you just didn't not go.
Yep.
Education was just kind of, and book reading and all of that stuff, and knowing about history and knowing about politics. I mean, we had conversations around these things, maybe not as many as my dad would have liked at the dinner table, full on debates, but you were supposed to think in our house,
Yeah.
and you were supposed to use your intelligence over your emotions when you had these conversations. And I'll own that we had the money to do so. Like my dad believed so much in education. My dad grew up in what was called the ghetto at the time in South Central LA. He grew up without a dad. He put himself through law school. And so money and education, he came out of it the hard way. So he put a lot of thought into saving
Yeah.
money for education. And so we were educated
So
because he
his
do it ourselves, and we have all of
yeah.
the kids done it themselves. Like we everything. I put myself through graduate school. I own my own home. It's not easy every month, but like I can honestly say I have paid for everything in my life.
Yep.
And yes, I was given a step up, but I've used it wisely. I would hope.
Yep. I think I see a lot of grew up in a rich family
Oh
is why you're rich, but like better opportunities often come from that,
yeah.
right? Ability and hard work or high education often comes from that. They're able to pay for the next thing. So I I see that as a stimulus, but I think it'd be an interesting one. I love the idea of running this same survey across cultures.
You know, if you're an international school and you don't have a legitimate scholarship program, you're putting every family in there at a disservice. I really believe. I mean, if you're not bringing in kids and families from all over to have opportunities, but also to make it more of a real world for the kids that come from opportunity. The difference in when I look at schools, because I go to 40 or 50 schools a year, right?
Yeah,
And I don't know if you've worked at a school before that had significant scholarship programs, but it's a different environment. And for some reason, it comes off to me as way more healthy if it's done right.
I agree. I mean, my first school, every teacher gave 20% of their salary to the scholarship program.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really laid out that way. It's just that we got paid like 40% less than other teachers in the international school market of Singapore. And we knew it was because every missionary kid got like a huge scholarship.
And was that something you knew that before you signed the contract?
Yep.
And that's probably something right up your alley. You probably didn't even
Oh,
blink. You said, I want to go even more now, knowing you.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It was like, yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
And
I
then
would second.
those students contributed so much, and then other students that didn't have that background or didn't have that financial need, it was a great dynamic. In Hong Kong, we had a scholarship program, and I took over the vetting of applicants and then the follow through with them. Um, but I also kind of put a stop to it, like because to an we weren't doing it to an advantageous way to those students. We were bringing them in at the wrong time within the curricular calendar. We were bringing them in and they weren't going to be set up for success in an American school system unless we brought them in earlier. And that wasn't how it had been designed. And so I pushed back to make sure that we did it better. So we took a little hiatus and we started it again. And then I left, right? And I had the data to track like student outcome and where they were able to go. And a couple of them were not nearly able to go to the schools that provided the full tuition because they hadn't done well enough at HKIS. Because they weren't prepared, right, for the American system. It's very different than Hong Kong. Um, but I've looked back at HKS's website and they started it again. They restarted it again in a new initiative where they bring them in earlier to allow them for full success.
There's a
And
lot of thought that goes into this, right?
yep,
And this is like, you don't just throw out money, you throw out opportunity. Like you have to think it through. It doesn't help if you don't. But you need to write this one down too. How interesting would it be to go to one of our conferences and bring different financial aid officers from high schools or board members or leadership on how they do scholarships at their schools? Can you imagine? Like if people just had a way to think through it, maybe more schools would do it. I'd love to hear because the Singapore one, I think that's great. It's the furniture upstairs.
yeah, it sounds good. All
Somebody
right,
got it.
that one to me is more of a consulting thing you and I can work on. We got to build that up a little bit. But I agree with it. The second one is things that don't shift in education or in admissions, but should. I think that would be a
Well,
we're
you
gonna
need John Beckenstadt at OSU, who's outspoken about all of that.
oh yeah.
And you need market tuition fit. And I can think of a whole other Mark Salisbury at Tuition Fit. And there's a whole bunch of others that are well spoken and they have the data to back it up.
Yep.
That's the thing about these things. Having the data to back it up.
Got to have the data to back it up. So China connections, number one, Romania, medicine, and Education USA, quarter of a century.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today.
We did it.
That's a good Friday for us.
Good Friday.
Well, Sam, should I stop recording here? Are you done? Do you say everything you want to say about
I think I said everything. Yep.
minds and norms?
Obrigado.